I'm happy to introduce our first speaker. Lisa Bronner, or Bonner, excuse me, is the granddaughter of the company founder, Dr. EMANUEL Bronner of Dr. Bronner's company. So if you're not familiar with Dr. Bronner, first of all, come to my house. I have the products all over my house. And they make pure Castile soap, hair, and body care products of the highest quality. They also sent us some epically good chocolate. Epically good chocolate. So strongly recommend you check that out. Dr. Bronners is committed to socially and environmentally responsible products. And Lisa is a company spokesperson and consumer education through her Going Green channels. So I'm really excited to hear what Lisa's going to be talking about with us today. Do we have Lisa available? Is she ready to go? Great. Well, then it's thrilled to pass it over to Lisa Bronner. Good morning, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome. I'll hand things over to you. We're so excited to hear your keynote this morning.
Super. Well, I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my snazzy slides. Do you hear the feedback that I'm hearing?
You're coming in clear in the studio.
Okay, that's all I need to know. All right. So, welcome. I know that now that I have my slides on the screen, you can't see me, so I'll try to make my voice nice and engaging so that you know that I'm still here. As mentioned already, my name is Lisa Bronner, and I am the granddaughter of Dr. EMANUEL Bronner, who founded Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps, as it was originally called. As we've expanded our product lines, we dropped the magic soap, but we still have a lot of magic in our product line, and so we are Dr. Bronners. We have been in business in the States since 1948, but our history goes back much farther. And what I hope to share with you today is not only a story of that I find very interesting, but I hope you do too, and a story that's rather unique. But I also hope to share with you a path that is followable, one that you could perhaps take back to other businesses, asking them to follow a similar path, or perhaps take the path yourself. And that's been the mission of Dr. Bronners, to lead the way, even though our roots might be a little bit unusual. So before I begin with the history of Dr. Bronners, I thought that with this crowd in particular, it would be really good for me to share my credentials. I am a very active pet owner. I have 2 dogs, 3 cats, and they keep me very busy. And so I've got my puppy Sadie, and Hershey is a cat that has adopted us, and we're working on trying to get her inside. And then we have Tucker, who's my 14-year-old Labrador, and you can see a great picture of him getting a bath with Dr. Bronner's eucalyptus and peppermint soap on my blog, Going Green. Tucker actually appears several times on there. And then I have my 2 cats that look so dignified in that picture, and they're really quite nuts, but Ollie and Ginny. So I learn a lot from them. They keep me company. I talk to them constantly, and I'm never really home alone. So Dr. Bronners, my family's company, has been soap makers since 1858. And our history goes back 5 generations, from the founding of the first soap making operation in Laupheim, Germany. So my great-great-grandfather was also EMANUEL Bronner, and he started making soap in his basement of his 3-story house in which he raised his 11 children. And he made soap in his basement in Laupheim, Germany. And recently, we actually had the opportunity not only to see the house in which he did this, but to purchase it. And that's one of our upcoming projects, as we are going to be turning this original site of our soap making into a museum in the basement. And then the upper levels are going to be a home for adults needing assistance. And so that is where we begin. The second generation of Dr. Bronners in its current form was in Heilbronn, Germany, and this is what you're looking at here. It's an advertisement that appeared in the newspaper in 1922. It was a Seifenfabrik, which means soap factory, and this building still stands as well. We got to see it. In fact, my brothers went over in 2009 and knew where it was and were peering in the window, and the owner came running out asking, what are you doing peering in our window? And after explaining who we were, the guy brought us or my brothers into the basement of our factory and showed us the soap making equipment that was still there, even though the factory is now a machine shop making machine components. You will also see there the label of the soap wrapper. It was a bar soap made with lanolin, which is sheep fat. And so that was the second generation. And then this is the third generation. That is my grandfather, Dr. Emanuel Bronner, in the sailor suit with his family. They were a very well-off family in Germany. They, at this point, owned 3 soap factories. My great-grandfather there, you see, very dignified man, he and his 2 brothers left Laupheim. They were 3 of the 11 children, and there just wasn't the need for that many soap makers in Laupheim, so they left Laupheim and went to Heilbronn, and eventually, as I said, founded 3 factories. They were very prosperous, and those are my great-aunts, Tante Luisi and Tante Letty, as well as my great-grandmother, Francesca. And so they were doing very well there, but unfortunately for them, the country was not going to treat them well. They were German Jews. They were very proud of their ancestry. They were fully integrated into the German economy, as were many Jews in Germany, and it was quite to their surprise when their country turned against them. So bit by bit through the 30s, the restrictions became more and more stringent. Eventually, there was the exclusion of Jews from economic life, and the factories were confiscated. They were Aryanized. We have the letter that was sent when the last factory, the one I showed you the lithograph of, when that one was confiscated and safely entrusted into Aryan hands. And unfortunately, my great-grandparents did not see the need to leave Germany in time. And by the time they did, the war had begun and they weren't able to leave. And both of them perished in concentration camps. Their children all left earlier. My grandfather actually left in 1929. And then my aunts both left in the 30s. One of them ended up in Palestine at the time. It joined the Zionist movement. So she was a mover and shaker herself. That was my Tante Luisi, the littlest girl, the one standing on the couch there. And then my Tante Letty became one of the first female professors in the University of Massachusetts system. She taught initially chemistry and then German language and literature at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And so she was also a trailblazer. My grandfather, as I said, came to the United States in 1929, and his reason for leaving was not the rise of Nazism. He had a split with his father and his uncles who were running the soap company. Although he had been trained as a soap maker and had planned to pursue that, he also felt a profound move to unify the world. He saw the fractures after World War I, which he was through. He saw the continuing fracturing of the world, and he had a message of world peace and unity that wasn't fully consistent with where my great-grandfather and his brothers saw they needed to go. And they saw my grandfather as a bit of a rabble-rouser and causing trouble in the factories. And so they gave him the ultimatum of either cut out the talk or leave. And my grandfather chose to leave. And knowing him as I did, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. So he came to the United States in 1929. And for a while, he worked as a consultant to various soap making operations. He was a master chemist. He adopted the name, the title of doctor because he had achieved the master status in Germany. And of course, we don't have that title in the United States. And so he thought that doctor was equivalent to that. He actually also changed his name because the family's last name was Heilbronner, taken from the town of Heilbronn. But at the time, most Americans only knew the word Heil in association with Hitler. And so he dropped the Heil from the name and became Bronner, or Brunner, as our Midwestern cousins say. So here is the generations of soap makers that we have up to the present. Over on the left there is Emanuel Bronner Sr., my great-great-grandfather, and then going through the next generation that took the soap to Heilbronn, the third generation with my grandfather, Dr. Emanuel Bronner at the bottom, who brought the soap to America, officially founding the company in 1948. Then we have my dad, Jim Bronner, and his brother, Ralph, who carried it just for a few years, and I'll get to that story in a minute, before it came to the current generation with my brothers, David Bronner, who is our Cosmic Engagement Officer, or CEO, and my brother, Mike, who is our president. My husband, Michael, is our Chief of Operations. My mom is still the Chief Financial Officer, so we are still very much a family company. So my grandfather still did not intend to bring the soap to America. That wasn't why he came. He came with his message. However, through various different roads that he took, that message of world peace became more and more urgent. World War II broke out. He watched his homeland at war with his adopted homeland. He saw his parents die in the concentration camps, and even his wife, Paula Wolfart, died as well in the mid-40s. And that was due to, actually, we don't entirely know what caused her decline, but she did die in an institution. So he had a lot of tragedy, both personal and national, I guess you would say, tragedy that could have sent him in a direction of bitterness and hatred, but instead he channeled that even more into his message of world peace. And he was very passionate about it. He spoke in this strong, forceful way. He, of course, had the German accent. He spoke English fine, but he's had that strong German accent. He spoke as he wrote with many exclamation points and short sentences. And what he did is he drew from every world thought he knew. Every religion, philosophy, scientific theory, every pursuit of excellence that he knew, he compiled it with the effort, and his intention was to show their similarities. He wanted to show people that they are more similar than they are different, and it's really a matter of what you choose to focus on. But as you might imagine, in the mid to late 40s, hearing this message there was not a receptive audience for it. And as I said, my grandfather had this very strong German accent. And despite the fact that he was actually Jewish, that wasn't immediately obvious when you met him. And so there wasn't a very receptive audience for him. Unfortunately, that landed him for a few years in an institution in Elgin, Illinois, where, because people thought he was crazy. He was passionate. He had this strong accent. He wanted to talk about world peace. He didn't make any sense to people. And he wasn't somebody who was willing to compromise. And they unfortunately didn't know what to do with him, and they sent him to an institution. He managed to escape from there. He was a very determined person. After his third attempt at escaping, he was successful. He hitchhiked towards California got in a truck and made it as far as Las Vegas before he, I guess, felt he was far enough away from Illinois that he mentioned to his driver that he had recently escaped from an institution, at which point his driver dropped him in Las Vegas, but he made enough money to make it the rest of the way to Los Angeles. And that was a very good move for him because the culture in Los Angeles was much more receptive. And so he still had his message of world peace that he called the moral ABC. And he called it the ABC because it's the basics, it's the principles, it's what we all have in common, regardless of our ethnic background, our religious background, our national background. And so he would go to where people went in Los Angeles, which is Pershing Square. Still to this day, people go to share their ideas, to speak on the corners, that people go to hear the thoughts of the day. And my grandfather was so grateful that he had an audience that he would, as a thank you gift, would share small bottles of his family's peppermint Castile soap. And he was making the soap in the kitchen of his tenement apartment in Los Angeles. Well, eventually word of the soap spread a little bit faster than the word of his message. And so he noticed that people would come and snag some soap and then they would leave and not stay to hear the message. And so that is when he had the idea to take the message and put it on the label on the soap bottle so that when people took the soap, they would take the message, and when they were indisposed and had nothing to read, they would read the message on the label. It is still to this day one of the most brilliant tactics I have ever heard to get people to read philosophy, and it worked. So if you've pieced that together, you can hear that the label came first. The bottle, the soap was secondary. The label was the purpose, and the soap was the messenger. And that is why the Dr. Bronner's bottle to this day is covered with tiny, tiny writing. It's not a gimmick. It's not a ploy. It is the utter roots and foundation of our company. It is my grandfather's writing, and if you look at all the different quarts, you'll see they have different components of his writing. So the peppermint, which was the original, has the first tenets of the moral ABC. The lavender has his poetry. Others have a more history of people or others that he felt were pursuing excellence that he wanted to share with the world. By the way, the picture in the upper right in the pink shorts, that's me. So my grandfather, Dr. Emanuel Bronner, you'll notice he is wearing the pinhole glasses that became his trademark. He wasn't actually trying to make a fashion statement with them. While he was institutionalized in Elgin, Illinois, he underwent electroshock therapy, which eventually degraded his eyesight. And so even once he was totally blind, which was before my lifetime, he would wear the pinhole glasses. So he had these different levels on which he worked, and they all worked in tandem. He had this social spiritual message, as I've mentioned, that we are all one. That's where that all one comes from. If you've seen that in our messaging, on our labels, on our website, all one is our phrase. We are brothers and sisters united on Spaceship Earth. Everything comes from that. So environmentally, he had, even in the 40s, when the tagline of the day was better living through chemistry, and it was the rise of detergents and the rise of, look at all the things we can do with petrochemicals and synthetics. He refuted that. He went in the other direction. He went back to nature, close to nature, ingredients one step removed from nature. They were simple and they were biodegradable. Economically, he also had a tenet that he held very close to his heart. He did not come up with it. He learned it, but he adopted it, called constructive capitalism, where you share the profit with the workers and the earth from which you made it. There would be no end product if the farmers at the outset, the millers extracting the oils, the soap compounders, the bottlers, everybody is instrumental in a product. And so the profit should be shared all along the line as well. So these were his priorities. Now, as I mentioned, the soap company jumped from his generation to mine rather quickly. My grandfather eventually was diagnosed with Parkinson's, which was a slow decline through the 90s. And during that time, my dad, Jim Bronner, who was also a chemist, was adopting more and more responsibilities at the company. He was sort of primed to take over as I was finishing high school up in Los Angeles, and my grandfather was down here in San Diego, which is about 2 hours away. My dad was coming down 2 and 3 times a week. And as soon as I graduated and moved out to college, I'm the youngest, my parents moved down here. And that was the plan. My dad was going to take over and things would continue nice and smooth. My grandfather died in March of 1997. One of the amazing beginning and ends, life and death connections that we have in our family is that my brother David's daughter, Maya, was born the very day my grandfather died. We got a call in the morning that my grandfather had passed away, and in the afternoon that my niece had been born. So that was phenomenal. Unfortunately, 3 months later in June, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. He had been a lifelong smoker. He had worked on asbestos ships in the Navy, and he worked with chlorinated solvents through his professional life. So that was no surprise to us. So he battled it bravely for 1 year, and then he died 1 year later in June of 1998. Fortunately, my brother David, who was 23 at the time, had already started to grasp my grandfather's vision. Not just that we have this soap company, but also this vision of the social and spiritual side, the environmental side, that this needs to continue. And he, of the three of us, my brother Mike and David and me, David channels my grandfather's passion the most. Not that Mike and I don't share it, but David, you can just see it in him, and he draws people to him as he moves in his realm. And so David was already planning on coming back. It perhaps was accelerated a little bit by my grandfather's and then my dad's quick demise after that. And so that's why it came into my generation very quickly, and one by one we all came back. And so after a while, we had to figure out, how does my grandfather's vision translate to us? If you have experience in family businesses, it is very difficult to take the vision, the energy, the purpose of one person and translate that into many people. I don't know that my grandfather would have thought it possible, and he probably would have lots of suggestions of ways we should have done it differently. Nonetheless, David, along with my mom, who, as I said, is still, she's been like the consistent thread through my grandfather, my dad, and our current generation. How do we translate what my grandfather started into what we're doing today? And so we came up with these 6 cosmic principles. How do you tie together this economic side with the social, spiritual side, with the environmental side? And so these 6 cosmic principles, we articulated them in 2015. I wouldn't say we developed them, because really it describes things we were already doing. We just needed to identify how are these working together. It made decision-making a whole lot easier, because once we articulated these 6 cosmic principles, we can filter any new decisions that need to be made through them. Do they fit with who we are, with what we're about, with what we hold to be our priorities? So the 6 cosmic principles, as you're seeing before you, are first, to work hard and grow. We have to be a strong business, or else nothing else is possible. We have to do well before we can do good. So that's always our first. We have to be a strong business. The second is to do right by our customers. They are who, as a business, who we're doing this for. They need to know who we are, what we're doing. It has fueled our transparency to an extreme degree, I would say, in the sense that we share our successes, we share our failures, we share our learnings, where we're at. Transparency, what we're doing all along our supply chains, what we do, how we treat our employees behind the scenes. There really is no behind the scenes. So we value that communication. My grandfather was all about communication. As I said, he founded the company really to communicate a message. And so there has always been a strong dialogue between our customers and the company. In fact, the reason I came on board was to help with that communication. My brother Mike was doing, I think at the time he was doing inventory, sales, and customer service. And that was a little diverse. And so he said, can you take over the customer service? So I started answering the emails that would come in, emails about how to use our soap, emails about what's with that label, emails about our ingredients and what is there, soy, is there gluten, is there synthetics or artificial preservatives. So we've always had that. Eventually my communication grew into a blog that I now write called Going Green, and the reason was to answer questions all at once, so you can find out how to wash your face with it, how to wash your hair with it, how to wash your dog with it, how to wash your cat. Only recommend the unscented for cats. So doing right by the customers is number 2. Number 3 is treating employees like family. This is that constructive capitalism we were talking about earlier. Treating employees like family. This has fueled our benefit package, which is unlike anything I've ever heard. The starting wage is $20 an hour, which is far higher than minimum wage. We have 100% healthcare, no deductible. We have vision insurance, dental insurance. We have 10% profit sharing. Goodness gracious, 10% bonuses. gave extra bonuses last year for appreciation pay. We have child care assistance, 50% coverage there. We also give great vegan lunches every day. So we treat employees like family. It's been really hard during this time not to be with each other. Because they are family. There are people who have worked at Dr. Bronners longer than I have been alive. I've grown up with them. They are family. My mom, as CFO, she is mom to many, many people now. And we're somewhere in the upper 200s of employees now. We really boomed last year. And even with that many, it's still a family. So our fourth cosmic principle is to be fair to suppliers. And this is where that constructive capitalism goes even further back, not just to our employees that work for us directly, but from whom we buy. We can no longer use the excuse in this day and age that we don't know what's happening on the other side of the world. Communication has made that excuse irrelevant. We know. And so we can't say, well, that's not my problem that they're living or working or being treated so horribly. That's all the way over there. We don't have that excuse anymore. So we need to be fair to our suppliers. Now, it was never ours, but there was a time we were ignorant. We bought through third parties. There was just some fuzziness along the supply chain. Where did this come from? How was the land treated? How were the people treated? That wasn't good enough for us. So I will get to what we did to solve the problem. So we made sure we were being fair to our suppliers. The fifth cosmic principle is to treat the earth like home. We all live here. This is our house. As my grandfather, he called it our spaceship Earth, that we are a vehicle, a vessel traveling together through the universe. And so we need to treat the earth like home. It is our home. It will be passed on to the next generation. And so this makes us analyze everything that we do and the reverberations from how we source our supplies to what we do with our waste, how we get our energy. We need to treat the earth like home and make sure that we are leaving it better than we found it. And the last cosmic principle is to fund and fight for what's right. My brother David likes to say that we're a soap company with the heart of a nonprofit. Which is why we are a benefit corporation. And I'll get to more details on that later. But we have always given a lot away. My grandfather did this as well. He wouldn't even ask if people, were ready to receive it. He would just ship soap off to, troops stationed around the world. He wrote to every sitting president and many others besides. He would ship soap or send money even to Israel. I was reading a telegram the other day about how he was arranging that. And today we do the same thing. We fund and fight for things that maybe aren't even directly related to a soap company. Things like prison reform, drug policy reform, lots of children's efforts and activities. We have a Boys and Girls Club here in San Diego, the James Bronner branch, that came from a donation my dad made a week before he died of 1,200 acres of land to the San Diego Boys and Girls Club. We do a lot within our industry as well, fighting for organic integrity, for strong certifications, for transparency. And so these six working together encapsulate what we do. And everything is connected to everything else. And I can't talk about one of these without talking about the other. So I was asked to talk about our journey in sustainability. Now, as you might have pieced together already, my grandfather was doing organic before organic was organic, back when organic just meant something that grows, as opposed to something that's inorganic. But as you know, the word organic came to mean a whole lot more. So the word natural we lost a long time ago. We lost it as far as it having a substantive definition. It's tossed around on labels, in marketing messaging, in conversation. We all hope we know what it means, but it doesn't legally mean anything. And so the word natural kind of fell by the wayside a very long time ago. And the word organic was poised to follow suit. So when David took over the leadership of the company in 1998, he identified this as top priority. that organic needed to mean something. And so in 2000, the USDA established organic standards and the organic certification for food. It was intended for food. And that was the direction it went for several years. That was all that was out there. It was the only certification that was out there. Well, David figured, why can't that apply elsewhere? And so in 2003, Dr. Bronners committed to the organic sourcing of all major raw materials. Those would be our oils, our olive oil, our coconut oil, our palm oil, our hemp. At the time, actually, it wasn't hemp. That was added later. Our jojoba oil and our palm kernel oil, as well as our essential oils. We're the largest user of organic and fair trade peppermint oil in the world. And so when David committed to doing this, to going to organic sourcing, the only problem was how to verify that. We wanted our customers to know that when we said organic, we meant organic. It wasn't just some, tiny organic amount in one ingredient buried deep in the list. And so David said, we're going to go organic under the food standard, since that's all that's there that is, a legally defensible, strong certification. And so he did. He brought in Oregon Tilth. That's the other certification seal you're seeing there on the screen. And he had Oregon Tilth audit us. That's an independent third-party certifier, very rigorous. They audited our ingredients, and they certified our coconut oil, our olive oil, our palm kernel oil, jojoba. They certified them organic under the USDA food standard. Well, in 2005, the USDA laid a lawsuit on us and said, you can't use the organic seal on a body care product. We countersued them. I wasn't involved then, so David and company countersued the USDA in April of 2005 and said, why not? If we are using food-grade coconut oil, which, yes, is very expensive to put in a soap, but if we're certifying or using certified organic food-grade coconut oil, what does it matter to you whether we put it in a soap or whether we put it in, a brownie? It's the same coconut oil. And so on the eve of the lawsuit going to court, the USDA dropped their suit against us and agreed that the USDA organic seal could be used for body care. The National Organic Program eventually also developed the NSF certification. David was involved with that, which is a specific certification for body care ingredients. Now that strengthened the USDA organic seal. It preserved it. It allowed it to be used for body care. However, there wasn't enforcement still of the word organic. The seal could only be used with certification, but the word organic could still be bandied about. It could be used in product names. It could be used in brand names. You could have a claim that said, organic lotion, when if you looked at the ingredients, maybe there was a tiny content. There could be a company name, with organic, in their brand name, but not in their product name. And so it kind of gave a false messaging. And so David wanted to tackle that loophole as well. And so in 2008, David, with Dr. Bronners, sued their competitors for $1, those who were making false organic claims, the word greenwashing. They were making claims that there were substantive organic content when there was not. And so obviously it wasn't for the money. $1 wouldn't have done us a whole lot of good, and we certainly spent a lot more. The issue was the publicity and was the education to bring this conversation into the mainstream, into consumer awareness, and even into retailer awareness. And so that was going back and forth. I can tell you that the trade shows during those years were a little bit awkward, but nonetheless, this was really important. And so before this had a chance to be settled in court, it was settled in the industry, because in 2010, Whole Foods, which was still private at the time, or independent, along with the National Cooperative of Grocers Association, mandated that they would not carry products on their shelves that didn't have, that were labeled organic unless they actually had legitimate organic content. And so that pretty much decided it, because Whole Foods was such a big mover in the industry that if they weren't going to carry a product, then brands, weren't needed to change the product or change the messaging on it. And so that sort of brought the organic conversation to, for us, a very happy conclusion. But while the organic battle, I will say, was going through its later stages, pretty much once we won the USDA battle, won the right to use the seal, we realized that organic wasn't going to be enough. Organic standards, which mandate, no synthetics, no carefully controlled use of materials on the crops, no GMOs, that sort of thing. It's a very environmental standard, but what is it silent on? It's silent in two areas, and we're going to tackle the first of them next, and that is the topic of labor. And so in 2006, we realized that as important as organic was, it wasn't enough, because it left out the people. You can be organic and the people can be treated horribly. The other aspect on which organic is silent is animal welfare, and that's down the road. So in 2006, after we had certified ourselves or gotten ourselves certified with organic ingredients, we committed to going to fair trade sourcing of all of our major ingredients. And the next year, we ourselves as a company were certified as a fair trade company. Now, the problem with this particular goal is that there were not fair trade sources of our ingredients. As I said, we're the largest user of organic fair trade peppermint oil in the world. We also use quite a bit of coconut olive oil and palm oil. There was a source of fair trade and organic olive oil, and that's a fabulous story that I won't dive into, but it's a organization out of Palestine called Canaan. But coconut oil and palm oil, there was not, and mint oil, there was not a source anywhere in the world that could supply the volumes we needed. And so this is where began our journey of vertically integrating our supply chain. So this began the building of what we call our Serenda world. We started in Sri Lanka with Serendipol, and that is where our coconut oil comes from. We then tackled palm oil with Serendipalm in Ghana, and I'm going to go through each of these projects so you can see them. And our most recent fair trade sister project is SERENDICOCO Samoa, another coconut oil supplier. We had to do this in order to establish our own source, any source of fair trade and organic ingredients. So Serendipol in Sri Lanka was officially founded in 2007. The conversation began in 2005. And if those two little details jar something in your brain, Sri Lanka and 2005, you might remember that there was a pretty terrible tsunami that struck Sri Lanka in the last weeks of 2004. One of our associates was on the ground working with a nonprofit to help in the tsunami recovery. And in that, he observed that there was an untapped resource of coconut trees in Sri Lanka. And we happened to be in need of coconut oil. And so we began the conversation of having our own or a sister project in Sri Lanka to supply us with coconut oil, and that was the beginning of Serendipol. The word serendi, you might see the root of serendipity, because so much of our journey is serendipity, meeting people at the right times, hearing an idea at the right time. And so that happy coincidence of serendipity we have embraced. And Paul is a Sinhalese word for coconut. So that is where Serendipol was founded. I've gotten to go to Serendipol in Sri Lanka. It's the only one of our projects I've gotten to see myself, and it is gorgeous. It's beautiful, and it's calm and peaceful, but extremely. People are just filled with vitality and life there. I love being there. The second project, I can't believe these were so close together because they were so big and they're so far apart and really they're so different, was our Serendipalm in Ghana. So take your mind over to the western coast of Africa. Palm oil, we know all the issues associated with palm oil, and it is not the ingredient that is the problem. The problem is how it is produced. And so if we decide we're going to get rid of palm oil, then people will just grow other ingredients in the same horrible fashion, the same habitat destruction, the same exploitation of workers. And so we wanted to do palm in a different way and in a different place. Most palm oil comes from Indonesia, the Philippines, that region. And so we went to Ghana, opposite side of the world, where oil palms also grow really well. This project to add a lot of learning to it because there were so many problems endemic in the industry. But now Serendipalm is a strong and vibrant mill. All of these are mills. We do not own farmland. We are not farmers. We buy crops from smallholder family farms. These companies, Serendipol and Serendipalm, are mills that process them. So that picture on the bottom right is the mill. Those are the you're seeing the little oil fruits that if you cut open, that is where the oil is extracted from. What you're seeing in the upper right, that is one of the fair trade community projects. And if you're familiar with fair trade standards, you know that there is a mandated community component to them where extra money goes into a community support fund because the community needs to be strengthened as well. So that was a maternity ward that our funds built in Asum, Ghana, in the town where our mill is. The third and most recent of our fair trade projects is SERENDICOCO Samoa, and this it was in 2016 because we needed even more coconut oil. So where are we today with our organic and fair trade content? Of our raw materials, 76% is certified organic and 74% is certified fair trade. Of the remaining amount, some of it is inorganic, which means it can't be certified because it's not an organic, it's not a grown material. We use a lot of minerals in soap making, such as sodium hydroxide, you might be familiar with. In our toothpaste, we use things like calcium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate, and other minerals that aren't certified or can't be certified because they're not organic. Our fair trade activity in 2020, even despite all of the obstacles in 2020, was still remained strong. You can see we used 4,100 metric tons of fair trade oil in our products, and the value of that was $23.2 million. So that was around the world distributed. I like seeing down towards the bottom of these numbers, about 2/3 of the way down, the local jobs created just in 2020 was 787 jobs. And for a company that, as I said, we employ around 270, 280 people directly, I'm so glad to know that in 1 year alone, there was an additional 787 people and families benefited by our work and our purchasing. Also, the conversion to organic there just last year, you'll see at the very last line, almost 29,000 acres were converted, and 1,000 farmers from all of our projects were certified organic. We have to walk them through that certification because 3 years of organic practices is needed before you can actually be certified, and that can be an expensive thing for them to do. So now we do have all of these certifications across our supply chains where they are relevant. We have, as I've mentioned, the organic, the fair trade. We're certified vegan, all of our products except for our balms because they do use organic beeswax. We're non-GMO certified, not animal tested. Our food products are certified kosher. That would be our coconut oil, which we do sell as a solo ingredient. And also, as was mentioned earlier, our new chocolate, I'll get to that. And we are a certified B Corporation. But that's not enough. Fair trade, organic wasn't enough, fair trade's not enough. What were we silent on? We were silent on animal welfare. And we also realized that organic, although it was important, didn't go far enough. Organic certification is about doing no harm. The problem we have now is that harm has already been done. And so we need to fix it. That is where regenerative organic comes in. It's about building back what we've lost, building back the soil that we've lost, building back the damage that we've done to habitats, to communities. And so regenerative organic is a new certification that my brother David with Dr. Bronners partnered with the Rodale Institute and Patagonia, as well as other organizations such as Fair World Project and Compassion in World Farming to establish this new certification. It encompasses organic, it encompasses fair trade, and it encompasses animal welfare. I like to say it's one certification to rule them all. And so regenerative organic certification was developed in 2017, 2018. In 2019, they did their first pilot audit where they audited 20 different projects under the standards of regenerative organic that they had developed to see, to put them to the test. Dr. Bronners was able to submit 3 projects of the 20 around the world. They were Serendipol, our coconut oil, Serendipalm, our palm oil in Ghana, and then Pavitramente, which isn't a sister company, but one that we very much have supported as they've grown, which is our supplier of mint oil in Uttar Pradesh in northern India. So the 3 pillars of regenerative organic certification, or ROC as we call it, are soil health, animal welfare, and social fairness. This information is either take a shot of it or go over and look at the Regenerative Organic Alliance website. But it is about bringing back life. It's not about not doing chemical input or not using GMOs. It's about putting life back into the soil, because healthy soil is the foundation of all farming and all environmental well-being. And so using cover crops to minimize the need to weed, to bring nutrients back into the soil, to protect the soil from water loss, using crop rotation so that there isn't that depletion that comes with monocultures, using animals wisely with rotational grazing. It does have the components of organic, as in no GMOs or synthetic inputs, but it promotes the biodiversity, so it builds back the soil health. The animal welfare, which of course is not a realm we work in, but directly, but in the use of animals in agriculture, there are the 5 freedoms, as well as the grass-fed pasture-raised component, no CAFOs, and the animals must be treated humanely. Then there's the social fairness, because we need the people, the communities to benefit as well. So living wages, wherever that may be, no child labor, no forced labor, maximum working hours, guaranteed work, so that people can build a sound financial foundation to know that they will have consistent employment, as well as fair pricing for buyers and farmers, consistent pricing. So there's 3 projects that I mentioned. We are certified ROC Silver in all 3 of them. So because the regenerative organic certification is so complex, it has 3 levels: bronze, silver, and gold. The highest they gave out during the pilot audit was silver, and we earned that in all 3 of the projects that we submitted. The Serendipalm actually came extremely close to getting gold. So that's our next goal. So regenerative organic is also about climate change, because having this much growing mass will pull carbon out of the air and put it back into the soil. It prevents carbon from being released from the soil because of the cover crops, because of the minimal tillage. And so this is about no less than reversing climate change. We're at the beginning of this, but as we go, more and more change can happen. You can read more about all that I've talked about in our 2021 All One report, which is our corporate social responsibility report we come out with every year. It's available digitally online at allone.report. This is our B Impact report for 2020. We are very proud of this. We have the second highest B Impact score in the world at 178 when the median is 84. We're just very proud of this because we put a lot of work into to what we do and the care that we take, and we're glad that it can be communicated in a meaningful way to our customers and to show other companies what's possible. We are a strong business. We're profitable. But we're careful and we're mindful. One thing I didn't mention is that we have a 5-to-1 salary cap on our highest paid worker to our lowest fully vested worker. And so, things like that help us to be able to do what we do financially. You'll also see in the All One report this graphic of the where our money goes. And you will notice that, not surprisingly, raw materials, goods and services, and our wages take up the first three chunks of our finances. And it's easy to point to that fourth bar, that light orange, that our donations and sponsorships is 8.6 of our total revenue, 8.6%, excuse me. But I like to point out that most of our sustainability, most of our work is built into the cost of goods sold. It's not something we do extra after we're done, when we have time, if there's room. It's something that's built into every bottle of soap. Every product is our sustainability and our work towards a better world. Those donations and sponsorships are things that, as I said, might not even have to do with our products. Now, there was a mention of our chocolate, and I know I need to wrap up, but I do want you to know, why are we selling chocolate? Did you catch that picture a few slides back of this one? That's a farm. It doesn't look like a farm. It kind of looks like a jungle. That's a farm. And this is dynamic agroforestry, which is part of the regenerative organic certification requirements. It's growing in diversity. This is how nature grows. You see the oil palms there. They look like palm trees. But you see trees that are taller. Those are timber trees. You see trees that are shorter, that are benefiting from the shade of the oil palms. You're seeing plants on the ground. Well, the plants on the ground are going to be your legumes, your turmeric, your garlic, other crops. Those plants, the trees that are shorter than the oil palms, you know what those are? Those are cocoa and banana and citrus. And what you hear there is other crops. So the farmers not only get the benefit of the oil palm, which is what we need and what we buy from them, but they get all these other crops that they can sell. And it gives them financial strength because they're not dependent on one crop. It gives them year-round income as the crops harvest and go to market at different times of year. So year after year, we're seeing all these crops going to market from our farmers. As I said, we buy the oil palm fruit from them, but they sell the rest to other users. And so year after year, we're seeing all this high-end fair trade organic cocoa going off to European chocolatiers and being made into chocolate there. And eventually we thought, wait a second, we're watching all this cocoa go out the door. What if we bought it from them? And what if we learned to make chocolate and sold a high-end organic fair trade chocolate bar? And so after many years and much learning, we now have Dr. Bronner's Magic All-One Chocolate. It launched just this year in August. It is 70% dark chocolate. It is vegan. It's sweetened with coconut sugar, and it is absolutely delicious. So that's what we're up to now. I do have more I could talk about, but I know that my time is up and we have some time for Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can go back to our conversation, and I look forward to hearing from some of you.